Welcome! Today I will show you more about middle game principles. I already made some videos on this and definitely check out this video on middle game principles, but I will tell you more about it in this video. So keep on watching. And here we just develop, and already on move 4 my opponent develops a queen. Before you play the middle game, there are the opening principles, and the opening principles are: have a pawn in the center, develop your pieces, and 3, get your king to safety. And it's not developing your queen on move 4. What do? I do the same. Maybe not the best thing to do, and I should stick to my own principles as well, right? And e6 would have just been a good move, but I was a bit worried that my bishop would never get out. And by the way, the computer recommends to go queen b6 anyway in this position, sooner or later. So queen b6, and here knight to f3, just developing. And so white could have taken, right? But after you take back, I do have a lot of pressure on the a file. Yeah, sure, I have double pawns here, but this is actually not too bad for me in this kind of positions, because the open file for the rook outweighs the double pawns, and I'm slightly better here. After knight c3, the same goes for me, right? I do not really want to take, because then my opponent has pressure along the a file. So this is like a standoff, and who takes first loses. e6 and then bishop to c4. My opponent is just developing. Here the computer recommends a bit of a crazy line. Simply take the pawn, and when the queen takes back, you take this pawn. And I thought this looked very scary for me. After queen to c, you know, with this rook, the queen is quite active, but according to the computer, I'm just completely fine here. I didn't see that, and I went bishop to e7. Just develop, right? First, I need to finish my development. e3, and I continue to develop. Here my opponent plays a move h3. Why? Well, probably he was worried about getting my knight here. So for example, just a random move, if you put your bishop here, then I could have played a knight here, attack this bishop, and this bishop will be gone. So my opponent played the move a3 here, and now I castle. And after c4, I bring back my queen. I should have gone forward, the more active square, but I thought maybe now I can get out at some point via the other diagonal, the other side of the board. Queen to the side of the board, making room for the pawn to defend, and also attacking the c6 pawn. And I was hoping I could break here, which I could have done if my queen was still on a5. So I underestimated this move. And that's another thing about the middle game. Try to remain active. Don't get your pieces back. So I should have gone forward with my queen and not backwards. Right here, knight to e4 would have been a good move, but I thought I would simply lose this pawn. But after a sequence of moves, here bishop f5, I would actually save the pawn or get back a pawn in this position, attacking the knight, and this pawn hangs after the knight moves. Here I went knight to e8, but that's not a good move. Very passive. Again, don't take your pieces back in the middle game. So what I did, and my opponent played the move bishop to d3. Here I go f6 because I need to go for a break. If I don't go for this e5 break, yeah, then I'm basically locked up. My opponent will bring his pawns forward at some point, right? And yeah, I cannot do anything, castles, you know, rooks behind it, and I will simply lose the game. Here my opponent should have gone queen to c2, attacking this pawn, and then it's quite awkward for me. But my opponent played b4. Not a good move. Do you see the brilliant move in this position for me? The one and only right move. All other moves are losing. Yes, e5. Great move. Attacking the bishop and also threatening to fork, right? So how do you see these kind of moves? Well, first I see the knight and the bishop awkwardly together. I see that this pawn is supporting it, and another thing is that I see that this knight is unprotected. If I ever would get a bishop on this diagonal, then that might be good for me. So, and then you start calculating, okay, e5, he has to take, right? Otherwise, if you go back, then I push and then I fork, right? So here, and this basically wins a piece. And this is winning for me. So my opponent has to take. What then? This is very forcing. Take back, takes back, then I take again. And then my opponent takes again. But what then? Well, then I have this great diagonal. And I was thinking, well, if it doesn't work out, I at least have an open position. My rook is better, and my queen will enter the game, maybe the bishop later as well. So this will be good for me, but this is very winning already because of bishop to f6, another brilliant move, which I spotted already when I played the move e5, lining up the two knights and the rook behind it. And white cannot really defend it in a good way. Well, only f4, but f4 we simply take. And now do you see a way to win 2 pawns? Well, these pawns are very weak, not defended. Can we attack them in a good way? Yes. Queen to g5, attacking both pawns. And I'm also attacking this pawn, right? Also a weak pawn. And look at these pieces. Super weak, not defended. They can drop off. The queen is out of the game. I am in a winning position. Here my opponent castles, getting out of everything my queen wants to do. But what's the best capture here? There's 3 captures for the queen. This is not the right capture, right? Because then maybe the rook will get in here at some point and my opponent will get activity. So what we want. According to the computer, to take here is the best capture, but I thought let's take here first to get rid of the most forward pawn first. And this one hangs anyway because I'm also attacking the knight. And you cannot defend both the pawn and the knight. Well, you can with king here, but then my rook will simply enter the game. And that is basically game over. So queen goes back to c2 where it should have gone to already early on. And I simply take the pawn with check. So the king has to move and now I play knight to f6. Bringing my knight back into the game and importantly also defending the h7 square, which was under attack now. So my opponent brings the rook into the game, looking to get the open file, sure, but I simply play my queen here, attacking another weakness in white's camp. So constantly look for ways to attack weaknesses, so your opponent needs to act. And now when my opponent did with queen to b2, I'm bringing my bishop, another developing move. My rooks are now connected and I want to go to the e file and double my rooks. King goes to the side and now simply I trade off the bishops and bring the rook here. Now if you take, then I simply take back and my rook is super active and good on this file and my opponent cannot really challenge this active rook. So my opponent decides to go out of the way, which is the best thing to do. Here I simply double up my rooks and my opponent attacks my queen. Sure, I just simply go to e5. Here my opponent offers the queen trade and I was thinking about it, but it's better to keep the queens on the board when you're attacking. And here knight to e4 would have been already a better position for me, but with the queens on the board, it might be even better for me. So I play rook a to e8. And if white now takes, then I take back and my rooks are now super active. Then this is clearly winning for me with such active rooks on the only open file of the board. But my opponent didn't take as well. My opponent should have taken here actually. So instead I should have gone back and didn't allow the queen trade to happen. But as my opponent also didn't take it, now I made up my mind and I didn't allow a queen trade anymore. Queen to f4. The rook comes forward, but now we start to bring in the pieces. Rook to e3, the only really square besides e1 where I can enter. Queen d2, attacking the rook now with the queen as well. And now I set up this battery on the third file. The knight is weak, the rook is weak, and the king comes forward. Here I simply take. Now don't take here, because that's better for white. Still black is better, much better. But you can bring in the rook, a great move. Attacking the queen and the rook behind it. There's not much white can do. So white goes on the offense, trying to trade off the queens here. But that's not what I want. So first I take the knight. If my opponent now takes, my rook gets back and is not attacked anymore. I simply win the knight then. So instead, my opponent goes on the offense with a check, but the knights are great defenders of the king. A knight next to the king often prevents any perpetual checks. Another check, yes, I gave up 2 pawns here for the knight, but look at the king's position. This pawn is weak, and if I get a queen here in some way, then I just completely checkmate my opponent. So what's a good move here? To both attack this pawn and threaten checkmate. Great move, rook to c4, freeing up this square for the queen, threatening to check, and pick up the rook, and then give a checkmate later. So queen to a4, but now I give a check, the king goes back, and this is not a checkmate, but there's another winning move, rook takes on b4, giving a check, and also attacking the queen, and in this position my opponent resigned. So keep these principles and ideas in mind. Always go forward with your pieces, make sure you have active pieces, look for weaknesses in your opponent's camp, look for loose pieces, and this will improve your game. Good luck in your next game, and see you next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye bye.